Today marks the 86th anniversary of the sinking of the great ship Titanic. And while the hit movie has piqued interest in the tragic story, NBC's Richard Roth has found a woman in England who has no intention of seeing it.
Not the lavish sets or the stirring score, not the love story or the drama or the special effects. None of that's enough to make Milvina Dean go see Titanic.
Well, because, as I've told everybody, when the panic starts in and people jump overboard, I think it might be my father jumping overboard. And I couldn't stand that, so I've no intention of seeing the movie.
Milvina Dean is 86 and one of the last 6 survivors of the sinking of the Titanic. She was just an infant, 10 weeks old. Her memories are the details her mother told her years later. The sound of a crash, the husband rushing his family to the lifeboat deck, the hurried goodbye.
But he said, more or less to her, that I hope to see you a bit later. And she just kissed him and said goodbye. She thought that she would because the ship was unsinkable.
The liner Carpathia rescued Milvina and her mother and brother and carried them to New York. Her father's body was never found. There were 500 families from this part of England that lost a relative when the Titanic sank. A passenger or a member of the ship's crew who never made it back to Southampton. Her mother remarried and resettled here, but as a girl growing up, Milvina Dean always felt the tragedy of the Titanic and the terror of that night were memories that belonged to someone else.
I didn't know or think anything about it. It had literally no interest for me.
It is true there's a mystique, she says, to have been there and survived, but mostly it stirs the curiosity of strangers who've heard her story.
The trouble is, they write me pages.
In her own life, she says, it changed just one thing, a plan to live in America, where her father would seek his fortune.
The only way that my life has been changed is I would be an American and not an English woman. That's the only thing my life would have been changed.
Milvina Dean says that was the opportunity she missed on the ship that sailed from here 85 years ago, a voyage she can't recall except in the stories told by others. For Today, Richard Roth, NBC News, Southampton, England.
One of only 6 survivors. You know, it's important to remember that behind the fascination, obsession, and the glitz of the movie is a real tragedy that affected so many people, and sometimes I think people do lose sight of that.
It's true. And when he says 500 families lost someone in that area alone.
And never knowing what happened to her father, a watery grave. So anyway, we don't need to leave you on this sad note, but that was a sad story.